A few months ago, miners in the Barentsburg mine, the last coal mine in Svalbard, found a small network of narrow, newly dug tunnels. These were in fact the work of elves, humanoid creatures from some parallel timelines that dedicate their lives to coal mining around the Arctic. They have been known to go to other timelines for coal, but this time they encountered some human miners and handed what appears to be a letter to them, written in their language called Elvish. If you want to learn more about it, there's this famous documentary on the Elvish language that you can check out. Though, despite the thumbnail, it's not to be confused with the Elvish languages featured in J.R.R. Tolkien's autobiography, The Lord of the Rings. Anyway, I'm quite fascinated by this letter, but the article I read didn't give any more information. However, I did find a document with a transliteration of the letter, so I thought, why not? Let's try to translate it ourselves. So I obtained a totally legal copy of the only grammar description of the Elvish language, written by linguist Sir R.A. the Eternal and the father of Gusabah, and got to work. Elvish is an analytic, generally head-initial language with case marking by preceding particles, an extensive animacy system called work order that dictates word order, and an important cyclic tense system based on the time of the year. And since it's analytic, words in the text are almost always in their dictionary forms, so the text was not that hard to gloss. I'll explain the grammar points as they come up in the text. So here's the first clause. The first thing we need to do is to figure out the tense of the clause, because it affects all sorts of things in the grammar. How tense works in Elvish is that there are 5 syntactic tenses, forming a directed loop, and which one marks the present tense depends on the time of the year the text was written in. If we know which one marks the present tense, then the next syntactic tense in the loop marks the future, and the previous syntactic tense marks the past. In this sentence, the syntactic tense of the tense marker is non-REM sleep phase 1. Yes, that's the actual name. And semantically, it's probably the present tense, so let's go with that. If that's correct, then the clause literally translates as, "This elf entrusts destroying the ball to that elf." This is in fact the usual way of constructing the imperative between high-class people in Elvish, so everything makes sense. Nice. And finally, in Elvish, each noun has an inherent work order, which is related to how respected a thing is in Elvish culture. There's this marker that raises the work order of the ball from 11, the least respected, to 4, the same as a high-class person, such as the sender and receiver of the text. In this case, I believe this conveys that the ball belongs to or is associated with the receiver, so maybe your ball or the ball. So all in all, I'm translating this whole clause as simply destroy the ball. Okay, we're finally done with clause 1. I'll go through the rest a bit more quickly. The second clause is a continuation of the first clause, literally to not attempt to use, so I'm translating it as do not attempt to use it, where it refers to the ball. Pretty straightforward. The third clause is a long and tricky one. I believe here we have literally to obliterate 15,625 times before the enemy from the shadow extends their hand. Now 15625 is 25 cubed and Elvish uses base 25, so I'm pretty sure it simply means big number. In English, one might say 1,000 or 1,000,000 instead. Magnitude-wise, 15625 is a bit closer to 1,000 than 1,000,000. Its log base 10 is around 4.19, which is closer to 3 than to 6. So I think it's better to translate it into English as 1,000 times. So that's the obligatory math part of the video done. And as for the tricky part of the clause, here's an explanation on the screen. Pause if you want to read it. If I got that correct, this clause should mean obliterated 1,000 times before the enemy from the shadows gets their hands on it. Now, the fourth and fifth clauses are basically the same. They both say obliterate. And finally, clause number 6 translates literally to all other things lead to collapse. It's not so clear what collapse refers to here, but Elvish culture is known to be centered around mining, so I believe that it specifically refers to the collapse of a mine. Furthermore, I'm suspecting it might then just mean tragedy or disaster in general. So I'm translating this clause into English as otherwise a disaster will occur, which makes more sense, I think. So putting it all together, the text says, destroy the ball. Do not attempt to use it. Obliterate it 1,000 times before the enemy from the shadows gets their hands on it. Obliterate. Obliterate. Otherwise, a disaster will occur. Alright, so it seems like there's this ball, this artifact, and it needs to be destroyed, or else something very bad is going to happen. Seeing that the elves bothered to cross timelines to warn us about it, I feel like I should at least try to spread the word further and warn whoever the message is for. So here's the plan. I'm gonna send copies of this text into various timelines, and hopefully a copy will eventually find its way to its intended recipient. Okay, this is gonna be a big brain move, but instead of just sending the Elvish text, I'm going to send a copy of the text translated into my submission for and the winning entry of the 4th Curse Conlang Circus, Lĩhusã. Okay, hear me out. Well, sure, almost no one speaks Lĩhusã. It does have an advantage over most other languages, namely its pictographic writing system. Look at this Lĩhusã sentence and its phonemic representation. Right, you have no idea what this means. But if I show you the sentence in the writing system, even without knowing any Lĩhusã, you can still at least kind of get the gist of what's going on. Lĩhusã developed a pictographic, nonlinear writing system as a result of its most salient feature. The phonemes of each sentence can be ordered in any way you like without changing the meaning of the sentence. This is achieved by replacing word order with reduplication. You say the first word in a sentence once, the second word twice, the third word 4 times, the fourth word 8 times, etc. To learn more about the language and the Xiao people that speak it, you can watch my CCC4 submission video. Now onto me trying to translate the text into Lĩhusã. And now we're recording. Nice. So let's translate this into Lĩhusã. Wait, how does it work again? Let's go look at the documentation. Go to catmistberg.tw. Lĩhusã, docs. Right, we have Austronesian alignment, nonlinear writing system, yeah. Blah, 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 phonology, blah, blah, blah. Right, we have the default dupe count, and then, right, the affixes, we have the linking particle, case particles here. And yeah, for Austronesian alignment, we have our voice markers. There's some other affixes. Right, I think we're ready, so let me adjust the camera. That looks good. And let's start drawing. Hey, translation commentator Kat here. I was trying out different designs for the ball, but of course I didn't know what the ball looked like, so I settled with just a black circle. So the first sentence says, destroy that ball. I fixed the typesetting later. Then the second sentence says, do not try to use the ball. Well, actually the word for ball is omitted, but we have these triangles. These are the oblique case markers drawn on the ball, so when you read it, you know that the thing you shouldn't be using is the ball. Now, the third clause of the Elvish text is quite long, and Lĩhusã doesn't like sentences with more than 5 words or so. So I split it into 2. This clause has an do A before B structure, so I rephrased it as do A, be quicker than B, which I hope preserves the meaning. As a result, we have obliterate the ball 1,000 times and be quicker than the obtaining of the ball by the shadow enemy. And as you can see, I had some trouble here trying to figure out how to draw this. Moving on, the 4th and 5th clauses are both obliterate. These are supposed to be the ball impacting some surface and the ball being thrown into lava, which is inspired by The Lord of the Rings, Tolkien's autobiography. I hope that's clear from the drawing, but maybe not. And the last sentence is, otherwise there'll be a disaster. For disaster, since the Xiao people are islanders, I decided to represent it with a flood. Also note that these people, canoes, and arrows are not just used pictographically, but also phonemically to spell the word for disaster, woensdag. Finally, there's me cleaning up the drawing, improving it a bit. The art could have been better, but it's fine. And that's the whole text in Lĩhusã. So I then bundled it with some grammar notes in English, which I've also put on the website linked in the description. Now let's send this to my friend who's a wormhole researcher who can send it off to... Wait, I accidentally sent it to Rhea instead. I mean, their names are practically identical. Easy mistake to make, really. Wait, what do I do? Oh, let's just pretend it's for a Conlang relay or something. Yeah, just a little haha prank, you know? Anyway, I sent it to the right person at the end, so yeah, hopefully the ball gets destroyed. Oh yeah, speaking of Conlang relays, it looks like this year's YouTube Conlang relay will have just dropped when this video is out. What a coincidence. So go check that out. Look, here's the video and here's the playlist.